Welcome, everyone, to today's Scaling with People podcast. I'm excited to have Raven O'Neill on the call today. She's the founder of SAPI GAL. She helps women elevate their businesses through mindfully crafted, holistic business courses, communities, and transformational mentorship programs. As a recovering C-suite executive with over a decade of experience working in the startup and investing ecosystem, Raven has advised more than 200 founders and helped facilitate more than 100 million in funding, making her a go-to business expert for women entrepreneurs. Her unique approach to business combines spiritual practices with executive tools and foundational business principles. This powerful fusion empowers women to build the epic shit of their dreams, making mindful decisions that align with their values and purpose. In doing so, they contribute to the creation of a more compassionate and joyful world. Welcome, Raven. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to join.
I love how you say that you're a recovering C-suite executive. I definitely feel that one. So tell me a little bit about founding the SAPI GAL.
Yeah, so like my bio said, I had worked in the startup ecosystem, very, very niche to women in startup. Of course, I did handle some startups with men and whatnot, but it was really femme focused. Yeah, I started out after corporate, moving into a marketing agency where I was working with founders on a more just a very small consulting side. And I went from there to take over a accelerator that was focused on women. And I actually took a business idea I had through that accelerator. And then at the end of that, again, I took over that accelerator and then began working only with women in startup, 51% female ownership.
That's awesome. So how's it been so far? Have you seen an increase in 51% plus women ownership in the last few years? Where is the market going?
So it is blowing up. I do feel off the top of my head, I don't actually have the data. It's really bad because I was just reading it today. But the data regarding the pandemic, we had the great she session. Is that what they were calling it? She session, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
But women were leaving the workforce in droves to go home and homeschool their kids and take care of the families. And a lot of them, as we're going back to the office and regular life, are launching businesses at a faster rate than ever before.
I certainly am one of them. I launched mine in 2011 or 2021, excuse me.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah, that's awesome. So let me talk about a little bit about, our audience here is mostly founders and CEOs of startup business world. When they're starting their business, maybe, employee number 2 or 3, maybe it's 20, maybe it's employee number 50. What are some key things that they could be looking for in regards to making a more diverse employee population to help continue mentoring and guiding and bringing women along?
Yeah, I mean, this really goes back to, having a very unique diversity of thought. You want to have all the different voices, life experiences, all these different backgrounds that come together and add to the value of your company. And, you of course want the mission, vision, values aligned, but really bringing in their own experiences to lift up the company. It's one of those things, depending on where you're at in your startup, if you're just starting out and you're just starting to pitch investors, or you're just starting to think about funding, or you're even just thinking about getting off the ground, first, second employee, people are going to want to see who you have on that team slide if you're pitching. And you want that diversity. You don't only just want diversity of people and what they bring to the flavor, to the what is the word I'm looking for? Oh my gosh, I want to say economy, but I'm not, I'm lost for words there. But just to the overall feeling of the company. I mean, yes, you want that, but you also want it to be when you're first, those first couple people, very specific to getting that task done. That, you're probably, if you're starting, a tech company, you're going to have a CTO. So you need a CTO, but you also want that to be a diverse thought. They have to have that background. So just being really mindful of how you build out that team.
Yeah. And I think that is really important. And having you said it earlier, having your mission, vision, and values set will help keep you on the right track to bring the right people in. That's going to really focus on what you need them to do. And then you can focus on, okay, their skill set, their background, their diversity, and making sure that you have someone that's going to be of a different mind than you, because that could bring out some really creative ways of move the company along. I remember one CEO telling me that he wanted to work with me because the first thing that he heard after we started working, but why he wanted to continue working with me, was that I told him no. And, you know, CEOs and founders, they don't hear that a lot. They end up, whether they mean to or not, can sometimes end up hiring yes ma'am, yes sirs, yes ma'ams, and just don't want to have that roadblock, because what you're doing in a startup is so challenging and so tough that you don't want to have another roadblock in your way. But having those no people to help you rethink or hear something differently, hear a different point of view, is what can make your product, your company, your tools, whatever you're offering, more rich and be more accepted by a lot more people. I know I said more quite a lot there, but there you go.
Yeah, it is absolutely true. Like, you do want the people that are going to be like, I don't know if that's right, or maybe you should think about it this way. Because if it is just a bunch of people agreeing, thinking that everything is great, you're going to miss the mark in some way. Like, your customer's not always going to be that yes person either. Your customer is going to be like, let me think about that, or no. So yeah, it's good. It's good to ideate in that way too.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot that goes into, I feel like we talk a lot about diversity. I think that you hear about it a lot. There's articles, or it's in the news. If you're reading any business journals, I'm sure there's at least an article in there about it. And I sit back and I wonder, how do CEOs and founders consume all that, but then turn that around to take action on it?
Yeah. I definitely don't think I am the right person to get too deep into that advice. I definitely think that there is a big movement to make sure that you have that diversity and really integrate all the different people you can into a company and into, again, feeding that mission, vision, values. But I do think that some of it has become a like checkbox now too. And like, let's not check boxes. Like, there's a right person for every position. There's multiple people for every position. So let's just go through that process and hire the right people.
Yeah, that's so true. I find that if you put the time in and set up the right foundation for your recruiting, what is your recruiting plan? What are the questions you're going to ask? Who should be part of the interview process? Should that be you and your number two? Should that be you and these three other people? Like, who are going to be the right people to interview? And then what questions are they asking? And be consistent across the board. Every candidate has the same experience being asked the same thing. I think where a lot of companies get in trouble with is that they just wing it. And then they go off, or if they have a script, they go off script because they're having such a great conversation with, Joe Schmo. And all of a sudden the 30 minutes, hour, whatever time they have slotted has ended, and they haven't gotten to the 5-10 questions that they're supposed to. And how are they supposed to compare this person to everybody else? Right. So I think that's one way of looking at trying to keep consistency across your interview cycle with all candidates. And another thing I've seen recently too is there's a lot of AI coming out in the world, right? And especially on the recruiting front, and seeing there are tools out there that will help you in your sourcing and identifying, kind of like what you said though, checking off the box, identifying how many women are in this sourcing group, how many are the different diversities of non-white. You can actually target those groups to help with your sourcing and bringing people into your pipeline. And then other tools like LinkedIn, they'll tell you how you're doing in regards to who's applying and how you're sourcing people compared to people in your industry. So there's a lot of data out there that's starting to come out to help support you and know how you need to tweak your recruiting for sure.
Yeah. It's funny, as a non-HR professional, I have so many questions for you. You brought it up that like, that is the technology, right? When you're getting hundreds of applications, there's just no way these days to like get through that in the ways we used to. So you're gonna include AI, but I don't know if this is advisable, but some of the best interviews I've seen happen are when you get closer to the end, the interviewers are going and doing their due diligence, like a deep dive, and they're making fairly personal, not personal, that was wrong. They're very thoughtful questions. Like some of the best interviews I've seen, I've sat in them and where the last question, I'm like, what? That was really good.
I've had one where the hiring manager asked the person who their favorite sports person. They were very specific. Who was their favorite basketball player? And I was like, well, shoot, I don't watch basketball. I would never be able to answer this question. But I pulled her to the side one time and I asked her, well, why do you ask that? And she's like, oh, because I want to know why, famous people. Okay, so everyone knows famous people. Why would you want to be that person? And then you can kind of peel back about, okay, well, that person is XYZ, and you can kind of see how they want to be, or who they want to be, or who they resonate as being. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. But it was a very targeted, that to me is a question that you ask. Now, generally, gender, like, stereotypical, you may not ask that to a female candidate. What do you ask to a female candidate if that's what you like, right? Or what is your secondary, oh, I don't watch basketball, or I don't watch football, or whatever, right? Like, how are you going to transpose those questions to be gender neutral? So you got to think about those types of questions too.
Yeah, that's true. These were not those kinds of questions, but but I see the end goal. I actually see where she was going.
Yeah.
What that got to. There might just be a bet, because I would have the same thing. I'd be like, my son plays basketball and I watch his games, so I have no idea what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think some of my favorite questions are, what have you learned from your past employer or job employment, and what do you hope to learn in your future one? Because that can show some character and grit too, for a person. But I dived into the recruiting. Totally sidebar this conversation. Let's get back on
that
track.
was me. Now my wheels are turning. I'm like, oh, I have so many questions as someone not in HR.
Well, but it is true. I mean, you want to be very careful on how you use AI, because it's not perfect, right? And it's still learning. And there's articles coming out that it is, does pull people that you shouldn't, or don't pull people you should. So, I think with any kind of technology, that's not the only thing you should be using. It's just a piece. It's a tool in your tool belt, but you should be using all your tools to do your job. Yeah, for sure. So tell me, what do you think are the biggest differences in regards to hiring women over men and around their motivation?
Yeah. It's funny. I was just reading an article about this recently too. And, men and women, every person has a different motivator, but they're doing these studies on the motivators between men and women. And what I had read was that, men have goals. They have very specific goals, usually like, I want to reach this pay grade, or I want to reach this position, and I want to do these things. And, they're saying women are just as competitive, but the competitive landscape is, I want to get here so I can bring this person up, or I want to get here so I can navigate the company in this direction. Like the end goal is usually different. And, it's been proven that women I also read today that women make better leaders. I guess the data has proven that in all the different aspects of leadership. But in regards to that, like you want women on your team. And again, diversity of thought. It goes back to diversity of thought. So that really you're bringing that empathy and all the different things that these different perspectives bring. Like it's been proven that women lead on a more empathetic side. And so you want that diverse flow of dare I say, like feelings and all of the things.
All the HR things that go on, right?
Yeah. I mean, you don't want it overloaded, but you want someone on your team that does lead with empathy.
I find that's very true since COVID. Like, I feel like the shift has definitely happened because of COVID, right? Employees want more from their employer. They need more. They're demanding more. And we are all human, and we're no longer these, human robots checking in and clocking out and doing a few things during the day and while you micromanage us. Like, we are all expecting more. And I think that's where leaders that do have more empathy, whether female or male, but female tends to have more than males. That's just generally kind of what we were like. We're not generally as strong as men, right? Like, I mean, it's kind of a mixture. Again, stereotypical, not everybody. Gotta be careful what I say. I don't want to offend anyone.
Same. I'm like, no, I don't want to either. Like, there is
Right?
data behind most of this, but I also don't want to make assumptions.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think people just want it. That's what they want in the workplace now. They want someone to understand that they are human outside of work, and they can't just turn off their personal life when they walk through the door. I had a great example of someone who is experiencing a plethora of things. Actually, I have two people right now experiencing a plethora of things in their personal life. And I have so much empathy. I'm like, okay, what can I take off your plate? Take tomorrow off. Like, I had one person, I was like, just take 2 days off before Labor Day. It's okay. That gives you 5 full days to try to like regroup. Right. And, just that empathy of knowing that they're dealing with a lot. And even though we have a lot of work that we're dealing with at the same time, it's a temporary thing for me to work a couple extra hours to give that person that peace of mind, and it also builds trust, and it builds, what's the word I'm looking for? Loyalty. It builds loyalty, right? So, and there's nothing better than having a leader who's going to go to bat for you like that, and make sure that you are, as a whole human being, okay, and being taken care of.
Yeah. And you actually brought up a great point that I know that falls in line with everything we've talked about too, which is the different generations. Because you brought up, almost like boundaries. Like, there's empathy, but then there's also boundaries. And I know that millennials, and what is that? Is that Gen Z now that's underneath?
Yep.
I'm getting old.
Both.
They definitely want boundaries. They want work-life balance. I come from a generation where you work as hard as you can, you join, or you climb the corporate ladder, you do all those things. And the truth is that now, especially now that the pandemic happened, like, people want their personal lives back, and they realize that they're so dispensable. And like, if I give you my life, what's at the other end of that? Like, it's definitely shifting that whole mindset. It's funny. I just saw on LinkedIn, someone posted about, I guess, is it Barbara Cochran from Shark Tank? Had told a bunch of interns that, it's the person that goes to 150% that gets noticed and gets hired on, and, joins a startup and goes from there. And yes, that's true. But then you get stuck. They're like, oh, he or she puts, that person puts in 150%, you're expected to put in that 150%. So like, where are the boundaries? Yeah. Which I think is the conversation we had on my podcast.
Oh yeah, I think so. Yep. Boundaries. Yeah. And I think it's so interesting because, just like we talked about on your podcast, it's hard to envision, because I'm also old school. I'm the same way. If I needed to work 40 hours, I worked 65, and I did a second side job too, right? I was always that kind of person. And I just think about where the startup world will be in 10 to 15 years with mindset of boundaries. Because in a startup world, you can't have boundaries. You can't just be like, I'm going to start a business and grow it to 100 million, and I'm only going to work 8 hours a day, and I might take 8 weeks off in a year, or even like 4 weeks off. Like, the CEOs I work with, like, I am yelling at them and begging and pleading that they take time off, and that, and that they disconnect and they stop working so much, because that's just kind of what you have to do. So I kind of want to look at my fortune ball, right, and see what is the startup world going to look like in 15 to 20 years with this. I'm not saying it's going to be a bad thing. I just think it's going to be different.
Yeah, it will be interesting, because I did give that disclaimer on the post I shared, which was that, definitely in business, if you're an employee, like, setting those boundaries is important, and the landscape is changing and all of that. But if you are an entrepreneur, you cannot expect the same, like, those 40-hour work weeks, especially when you are just starting out. It's like, it's not a thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Will it be a thing? I don't know. I debate the, like, time to get stuff done, and then, like, expectations. Again, if you're taking on capital. Like there's an expectation that you're going to hit these milestones. Can you hit those milestones if you're working 40 hours? I don't know.
Yeah, maybe if you can somehow work smarter, but I think a lot of the CEOs I engage with, they're working smart. And I think that maybe the key is recognizing that maybe instead of it being 2 years, you need 4 years. But the hard part about that is, will the investors accept that, right? The investors are very demanding and they want 2 times growth increase. You can't tell them, oh, it's going to take me twice as long to get there. It's just, that's not the reality. So it will be interesting to see how that mindset and how the generation changes the landscape here for us. Yeah, for sure. Well, anything else you'd like to add? Any other takeaways, tidbits that you'd like to give to CFOs, COOs, CEOs, founders of the world that are listening today?
Yeah, not an HR professional. There is so much to be said about going with your gut. Lean into, like, I love the statement, like, it is in your gut, it is either a hell yes or a hell no. And it's one or the other. And if it is like so much of a not a hell yes, or if it's not a hard yes, sorry, that's probably gonna be terrible on the audio. The hard yes, like if it's I don't know, then it's probably still a no. So lean into your gut.
I'll double down on that. I've learned in my recruiting experience over the past few years that if I'm questioning whether to put someone forward to the hiring manager, wanting them to, hey, take a look at this resume, I'm not quite sure, it's a pass. It's a no. Like if I'm doubting it whatsoever, it's a no. And I think, I don't know, my empathetic person that I am sometimes gets trapped into, well, this person needs a job, let's figure out how to get them a job. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing them any service. And I'm certainly not doing the hiring manager any service. Like, you need it. Like, yes, there is the right person. There's multiple right people for a job, but there are several multiple people that are not right for the job or the company. And setting everyone back is not beneficial for anybody, because that means I may have taken that person away from an opportunity that was way better for them.
Yep, agree. That is my, lean into your intuition and your gut and hire the hell yes.
I love it. Well, thanks, Raven. It was great talking with you today. Really appreciate it. And I hope those listening have some takeaways here on how to make your team more diverse and bring along women, help them, coach them, get them into your organization and make a diverse team. Not just women, but that was what we're focusing on today. So thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.